some of you may already know this, but the Maryland Medical Board charged me with practicing medicine without a license 15 years ago and fined me $325,000. And when I pointed out to them that their statute said that practicing medicine meant diagnosing, treating, or prescribing, and we didn't do any of those things, they said it didn't matter. If people came to me and they got well, then I must be practicing medicine. And I had one of those moments later on when I realized what I should have said. When I was standing in front of them, what I should have said was, well, it seems to me if people come to me and get well, then I'm obviously not practicing medicine. Right? Yeah. Right? But it didn't occur to me at the time. But that's, you know, that's how they rolled, right? Here's what the law says. Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're not infringing the law. We're going to charge you with this anyway. And that's what they do.
You have to pay that amount?
Did I have to pay the amount? I didn't pay the amount. How many of you remember the Ford Pinto? You remember that? Mm-hmm. The Ford Pinto was a car from the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, I think. And it was a really ugly little car. It was an economy car, cheap little thing, little box. And the back end went up like this. And in low-speed collisions, rear-end collisions, like 5 miles an hour, they would explode. Okay, if the gas tank wasn't full, you know, if there's fumes are more explosive than gasoline. So if the tank was full, it wouldn't be so bad. I mean, people were injured, but these cars were exploding in low-speed rear-end collisions. And so there was a lawyer, a young lawyer, recently out of medical school, who took on what seemed at the time an unwinnable lawsuit against this mega company, Ford Motor Cars. And his name was Frank Hermes, and he happened to be married to my stepmother's sister. And so I've known him since around that time, actually. I was 10 years old in 1971, and I think it was around that time. That's when I met him. And he built a very successful career protecting consumers against irresponsible companies, and spent a lot of time in court, you know, a lot of litigation. And so when this happened, I called him. I'd known him at that point for 35 years well, and said, Frank, what do I do? And he said, you stop paying a lawyer. Don't pay a lawyer another penny. I said, what do you mean? He said, you can't beat the medical board. In the US, we have the legislative branch that makes laws. You have the judicial branch that upholds the laws, except for in medicine, where the medical board makes and decides who's in infringement. Okay, there's no separation of power there. You can't beat them because they get to decide. They say you're infringement, you're an infringement. So he said, don't pay a lawyer another penny, you cannot win. I said, but if I'm not represented in court, they're going to find me guilty, and there's going to be a judgment, right? He said, yeah, there's going to be a big judgment. He said, do you have any money? I said, no. He said, then don't worry. They can't take it from you if you don't have it. So we'd already moved by the time all this happened. We were already in Central America. And I don't own anything. I mean, Tanglewood is a Costa Rican corporation, and they can't go after the corporation. I don't own any personal assets. I mean, I have a 27-year-old car. It's probably worth nothing, like worth negative money. The money I have to put into it is probably worth, cost more than the car's worth. So as it turns out, this past August, the statute of limitations expired. So they can no longer collect on that judgment. So there's no danger there. But there's no danger anyway because I have nothing. I don't take a salary from Tanglewood. I own nothing. What are they going to take, right? But that's the way it works. And it's interesting. I mean, along the way, that, they were completely operating outside of the law the whole time, right? In the U.S., if you want to, and it's no different with the medical board hearing, they have to give you what's called legal notice. You've seen this on TV. Hey, are you Mr. Smith? Yeah, why? Here you go. You've just been served, okay? The process server hands you a document. That's official notification that you have to go to court, and they have to give you that personally, right? Unless you authorize somebody as your agent to accept service. I never authorized anyone as my agent to accept service. We were already moved. And I mean, they also say, by the way, if you read the stuff online, I fled the country. I made 8 trips to Central America looking for a site before anything ever happened. Okay, my plan was always to start Tanglewood in the U.S. because when I started Tanglewood, there was no internet. I mean, I don't know if maybe it was available then, but like no one had an email address. No one, there's no Google, there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook. No one was online. And so I thought, how am I going to, if I move to Costa Rica now, which is what I wanted to do, how am I going to actually find clients? How are they going to find me? I thought what I would do is I would start in the U.S. and build a clientele and then move once we had a clientele. That was my plan. And I never realized, never had any imagined that the internet would become what it is, right? Most of you probably found me on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
YouTube's been a really powerful thing for us. I only wish, if I wasn't such a technophobe, when YouTube came out, I thought, that's my medium. I speak well, I'm not that ugly, I should be on YouTube. But I was afraid. It's like, I don't know how to do that. And we were actually here in Costa Rica. It was already 4 or 5 years after YouTube existed. And I had a client in her 30s. And she said, Loren, why don't you have a YouTube channel? I said, I don't know how to. She's like, I'll set it up for you right now. It'll take 5 minutes. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, I had a YouTube channel. It's that easy. So that's been a game changer for us, for sure. That's why we have people from all over the world.
Did they ever serve you the papers?
Well, so thank you. Yeah, coming back to that. So I was already gone. So one day, the process server goes up there. I had a client of mine, who you may hear about at some point, a deaf woman who lived nearby, was a massage therapist and had worked for us as a massage therapist. When we left, we had the property on the market, and she said, Loren, you want me to come up and cut the grass for you? I was like, yeah, could you do that? That'd be great. So I was paying her to cut the grass in the summertime, once a week, whatever it was. And they came up one day when she was there cutting the grass. She couldn't hear. She's completely deaf, right? They hand her this document, tell her to sign, she signs. And she says, hey, I got this thing for you. I'm like, what'd you get? She tells me, I didn't authorize you to do that. I said, I need you to write a letter and have it notarized saying that you were never authorized to accept service. You didn't know what you were signing. So she did that and sent it to them. And they said, well, she had been my agent, but I took away her authorization after she was served. That's bullshit. They're just making it up. There never should have been a hearing because they never served me. They don't care. They don't care. Yeah, there's someplace else, in the U.S., there's a great movie called Double Jeopardy. Anyone ever see it?
Yeah.
It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it or not familiar with the concept, and again, I keep saying it because I don't know what it's like in Canada or the UK, but in the U.S., if they try you for something and find you innocent, they can't try you for the same crime. If they try you for murder and find you innocent, you kill somebody else, then they can try you again, but they can't try you for the same murder twice, right? So when they found me guilty of practicing medicine, most of what they used to support that were the same 5 or 6 client cases that they had decided 3 years ago I wasn't practicing medicine. They looked at the same 5 or 6 cases and ultimately came to the conclusion, no, he's not doing anything wrong. I'm not practicing medicine with a license. And then 3 years later, what happened was a young woman overdosed on insulin and died as a result. And we had nothing to do with that. She actually died. She didn't die as a result of the insulin. She died as a result of mismanagement by the hospital. Here's another piece. There was a doctor at the hospital that said, I'm willing to testify in your behalf because this had nothing to do with you. She died because the hospital mismanaged her case. She was there for 5 days, 4 or 5 days. the medical board refused to hear this doctor's testimony. I mean, like, that doesn't happen in normal law. You have a witness, they have to listen. No, we're not going to listen. She can't speak. They didn't care what the truth was. Didn't make any difference. Okay, they weren't interested in the truth. They were interested in trying to drive us out of business. And in fact, they sent me a cease and desist letter. They sent a letter through my lawyer that said, you have to cease and desist right now. And I wrote back and said, well, since I'm not a licensed doctor and I'm not practicing medicine, I'm not doing any things that constitute practicing medicine, you have no jurisdiction over me. So stick it up your ass. And we kept operating for 14 months. And we left the country right on schedule as we'd been planning to do for 2 years, planning to make this move. We left just as we had always planned to. We didn't flee the country. You know, people say, I can't be in the U.S. I'm in the U.S. 2-3 times a year. We met in the U.S., right? It's nonsense. Someone said the FBI is looking for me. Yeah, well, I'm right here, guys. I mean, I'm not hiding. I mean, when I go to the U.S., I publish my schedule, and there's, you know, it's nonsense. These are trolls that want to try to injure us.